Hey you all, Carpetbagger here, coming to you live from the north, more specifically Mount Clemens, Michigan, and even more specifically than that, I'm in front of the Anatomy of Death Museum, a museum that celebrates, or at least explores, all things death related, from the process of death and all things connected to the act of dying. I'm very interested. I've not been here before, and I'm interested to check it out. So please follow me. Got a nice looking hearse out here in front. Have a little carousel horse, a skeletal carousel horse out front. It's an oddity shop up here in front. It's various medical instruments. Some replacement legs there, some different plastic organs. It's a mummified cat here. It says this is over 100 years old. Some art here made out of animal parts. Over here looks like a armadillo skeleton. Mummified bats. It's a genuine embalming machine used in the embalming process. Army roll onto the embalming table. So let's see right there, and then there's, I guess they just poke you full of holes, pump you full of chemicals, and let everything else drain out. Another embalming table, different pieces of metal art. This bear here, completely shrouded in Masonic clothing. This is a gas mask for a dog. I guess it's fitted for a German Shepherd, which is pretty amazing. I've not seen anything like that before. I can only imagine trying to get a dog to wear a gas mask. Seems like they would be resistant. Alright, and the museum is through the body bags. Oh, it's ominous. We have a real skeleton to start out. This is a Oddfellows ceremonial skeleton. A lot of the skeletons you'll find like at garage sales and being passed around are actually Oddfellow skeletons that they use in their mysterious rituals. This rotating right here says this is a real skull from Victorian era. So they have filled in parts with wax. That's an educational tool. My gosh, look at that. See the inside workings there. Now this is insane. This is a 600-year-old medieval skull. The skull was cut in half by a broadsword in a battle. So this is actually a victim of a medieval sword fight. So this guy had his head cleaved in half with a giant sword. It's an embalming kit right here. You can see the lip wax, different colors and makeup used to preserve a body. Yeah, look at those that big can of embalming powder. Some skulls up here. Says this is a portable embalming table. All these different embalming tools. Look at that big thing. I guess you wouldn't mind having these needles all stuck in your body when you're already dead. It doesn't really hurt, doesn't really matter. Yeah, they have a lot of human remains in this museum. That's a spine that was on display in a chiropractor's office. These are headrests for an embalming table. This is a genuine gurney here, used to transport bodies from the scene of death to the funeral home. This is a rental child's coffin. Apparently you would rent this nicer looking child's coffin for the funeral, and then after the funeral they would move the child to a cheaper casket and use this one for the next funeral. Down here have a Buddhist monk skull. It's been adorned with all these different adornments. So this was actually used to eat and drink out of. And there's another skull cap that was used as a bowl. Interesting how different cultures use dead body parts. All these different chemicals used for different parts of the embalming process. Look at that. Ore balm orifice chemical. All these different human bones, different parts of the human skeleton. So that femur there has a knee implant, metal knee implant on it. And down here, we have the skull of a giant. This doesn't look like tremendously enormous, but it said this was from a medical college in New York, and it was marked as the skull of a giant. You can see these bones have been altered by man, have the artificial hips put onto them. This here is a paper mache skeleton. It says that when the Oddfellows did not have a real skeleton to use in their rituals, they would make a paper mache replacement. African tribal bowl featuring a pig skull. We have some more skeletons here. These are skeletons used in teaching. They have all these kneelers from different funeral homes, different caskets. Skull right there. Now this down here, this is a syphilitic skull of a person suffering from syphilis. It's an art piece right there. You see, used as part of a skull holding moss. It's a hydrocephalic skull. It says that there was fluid buildup in the skull, causing the skull to enlarge. These are little miniature funeral vaults, so that a salesman would show these to people to show them what the full-sized vault would look like. It says that this wheelchair here belonged to the same man who had these artificial legs, and then right there resting on the chair is a porcelain embalming machine. It's another vintage embalming machine. So this is found straight out of a funeral home, resting on its original cart. This is a Naga trophy skull. This is a Naga were headhunting people, but they weren't into, I guess they weren't into shrinking heads, but they kept the skulls as trophies. This is a skull that was used to show off a trepidation device, which is a device that drills holes into your skull for medical reasons. And I think there's some medical reasons to do that, like if you have brain swelling or not, but there was groups of people who believed just doing it as a regular practice, because they felt that these holes in their skull were beneficial. These are Sepic Ancestor skulls. Apparently the family would take the skull of the deceased, cover it with clay to recreate the dead person's head, and then they would actually add the face paint that person would wear in life. It's an interesting way to remember someone. This one down here is very interesting. It looks like they've incorporated some animal tusks in the design. It says this embalming machine here was used all the way up to last year, 2019. Some autopsy equipment right here. This is a bone saw. Man, look at that. That looks like just a giant machete, but I guess these were used for chopping up people. There's a portable autopsy kit, all the different knives and saws and hammers. Now this is something that I had no idea was a thing that actually existed. These are burial shoes. I had no idea that there was like special shoes that you put on deceased people, but actually that makes a little bit of sense. You can see the front of the shoe looks like a normal shoe. The back, I guess, has a little more leeway where the heel can poke out, because that part would be down and not be viewed from the coffin. Yeah, it looks like a lot of them have adjustable backs to them, I guess to be easy to fit over a deceased person's foot. This skull here in this box, another human skull used as a trophy. It says this was the trophy carried by the winner of a battle, so someone killed this person and carried around their skull as a medal. This is another Oddfellows implement. This is a death helmet that would be placed over a skull during a ceremony. These are different items from a funeral of this woman right here. She died from being hit in the head by a bus, which is just horrifying, and actually have her braids that were removed after her funeral. This skull here, or what remains of the skull, this was from a tractor accident that split someone's head completely open. That's an awful thought. This skull has some markings and labels on it. It says this is a Tiv Ancestor skull. This was used as a symbol of protection to ward off evil spirits and night witches. Honestly, don't believe I've ever been to a place that had quite so many skulls. This mask here, it says used to keep patients' heads still while they're undergoing radiation therapy for brain tumors. I guess these marks would be where the tumors were on the last patient. This hoist here was designed to move people off of the embalming table and in to the casket for their funeral. All these different bones here belong to a doctor. Kept them as a collection of different bone deformities. You can actually see he labeled the bones to what deformity they were. So this one shows an amputation. It says intercapsular fracture of neck with atrophy and fusion of head to acetabellum. So some very technical terms. I don't know what that is. This is a gun stock deformity. That's his rider's bone, I guess, the type of deformity. It's a bloodletting kit, you know, where the answer to everything used to be just make you bleed. Sign here, Asylum for the Insane Evaluation Center. Oh man, you don't want to be evaluated there, because you know it could probably go very bad for you if your evaluation doesn't come back good. It's another Oddfellow skeleton. Makes you wonder, where do the Oddfellows get all their skeletons? It's a Ceremonial Nagula execution sword. This sword was used to kill people. This skeleton here was found at a doctor's estate sale, and says that there was some extra bones in the box with it. Not sure why there was some spare parts. The evaluation center for disturbed women. Got so many horrible tubes and nozzles be shoved in your body. They're not horrible because you don't feel them. The funeral practice is actually a very honorable practice. It's different embalming machines used to pump chemicals into a deceased body. And there is a tuxedo that be used to bury someone. It says that they're split down the back, so they're easier to put on a person. Human skull there. A lightweight. It's got little hooks right there. I don't know if its head can pop up. Very cool. Thank you for joining me here at the Anatomy of Death Museum in Mount Clements, Michigan. Probably, I'm going to go out on a limb and say this. I don't think I've ever been to a museum with more skulls, more skeletons. I think if skulls and skeletons are your thing, I think this is the #1 museum for you. Thank you thank you for joining me. I want to thank them for inviting me out here. If you'd like to see other places I've been, please check the interactive map in the description of different oddities shops, different museums, different roadside attractions, different amusement parks, all sorts of fun stuff. If you'd like to help support the channel, consider donating on Patreon. $3 or more will get you a postcard once a month. Also now selling enamel pins in the Etsy shop. We have 2 different varieties. Until next time, this one's in the bag.